mō te painga o ngā tangata o te kaunihira o Rotorua. Takua mai, kia tau te langa Māori e, ki rongo i a mātou i ngā wā katoa, ko ihu karaiti hoki te mātou āreki, amen. Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all mankind and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon us, your servants, this day, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Sturt. And now I'll call for any apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Rotorua Tate. Could somebody move? Thank you, Councillor Kent. Seconded, Councillor Gould. Are there any further apologies? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. And could I also this morning welcome Gordon Priest from Western Heights. Put your hand up, Gordon. This is a lovely addition, actually. Thank you, Ben, for following up. Gordon's a Western Heights student, interested in politics, and wants to come and see a council meeting. So great to have young people's interest. And it'd be interesting to see your view of how the meeting goes too. But Ben, thank you for bringing young voices. That's something that we really do appreciate at our council, because youth engagement is one of our new strategies. So thank you for that. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Bentley? And thank you. Just signalling that. No further at all. Item 4, I want to ask, are there any urgent items not on the agenda? And I myself want to put on the agenda in public a report on the Boreang Mud Festival. There seems to be a high level of interest, and Mudtopia, so I've asked for that briefing myself so that the public can understand the whole event and what's happening there. And also, so I'm just signalling that. And also confidential items that will be dealt with in confidence, and I want to have a mover and a seconder that the confidential item contract 17016 tender approval for all urban water renewals 2017-2018 be dealt with at this meeting. Thank you. Second. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. All those in favour, please say aye. I'm to give a reason why this item is not on the agenda is because the tenders only closed on Friday the 21st of July, and further time was required to repeat the process, and we couldn't delay it because it relates to the new financial year that begins on the 1st of July to the 30th of June 2018. The next, yes.
One of the other reasons for you bringing it today would be that it is above any of the delegations of staff and of chairs.
That's right. The next item is contract 16/015 for the Rotorua City Focus Refresh Construction, variation number 1, Jean Batten Square, Inner City Precinct Design and Construction. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Hunt, that the confidential item for the Rotorua City Focus Refresh Construction variation number 1, Jean Batten Square and Inner City Precinct, detailed design and construction be dealt with at this meeting. Seconded, Councillor Sturt. All those in favour, please say aye. And I'm a contrary. Carried. And the reason why this item is on the agenda is because negotiations with the contractor have just been completed, and the item can't be delayed to a subsequent meeting because the work needs to commence immediately to allow the project to be completed on time. Right, move now to...
You need to put those motions, they be handled in confidential.
I have signalled that they're in confidence. Yep, thank you. Confirmation of council minutes. The council meeting on the 29th of June 2017, page 7. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kent. Seconded Councillor Donaldson, that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 29th of June be confirmed as a true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Do you want to give the briefing now before we go into the reports? Thank you. So we ask now for the briefing that I've requested, given some of the interest since the visit to the Mud Festival in Boreang last week and issues arising. Thank you, Mr. Tiriana.
Morena koutou. Stuart and I are just going to give a bit of an overview of probably where we've got to today. I think most councillors would have seen a heads up last night that we'd received some inquiries around where we are with this event. So just to put it simply, over a year ago we signed a MOU with the City of Boreang to work on ways to co-promote our events. Their one up in Korea and ours here in New Zealand, and one of those things is in the last week we've had people up in Korea learning about their event, and also a cultural display that happened as well around that. Also reciprocal to that, when we have our event in December, there will be a part of our compound will have an area where the Boreang Festival is promoted, and within this promotional area there will be an element of a Boreang mud experience. Now the difference between our mud and theirs is ours is geothermal and theirs is more of a cooling type beauty mud. I don't know the exact science behind that, but that's where we've got to with that. So for the next 5 years, as part of that partnership agreement, we are working with them, and we will have a Boreang interactive element of our display here in Rotorua. So Stuart, you've got some more to...
Yeah, so obviously the Mud Festival is something we've been working on for a couple of years now, but I think the other thing to remember as well is that through one of the mud suppliers here, where actually there is Rotorua mud actually going up to the Boreang Festival as well, and has done for a number of years. So it is reciprocated.
Thank you, and there appeared to be a little bit of a lack of information about that, and I felt it was important. I want to say too that there'll be a full report that comes to Council, that our trip to Boreang was funded by Korea, by the Festival and Events Association of Korea, and I spoke at a conference there, and that I'll give you a full outline in a report later. And en route there, I did stop at, it was rather silly to get to Boreang and not go through and see the Nanjing Rotorua town and a night with our sister city in Wuhan. And no councillor had been there for 4 years, so they were very delighted that Councillor Maxwell and I made the effort, and that is the only little leg of the journey that is paid by Rotorua Lakes Council. The rest was fully funded by IFEA. And also delightful to have Rangawewahi with us, and that component, the cultural component of that trip, was paid by government, which was a lovely, well, an acknowledgement really from Minister Barry that it was very important, as well as having the festival, to have a cultural exchange. I just would like you to know that you've got to see this event to believe it, really. I had only seen what all of us had seen before. It's that and more, with thousands of people, and I don't think we'll be doing it quite that way. Actually, we'll do it the Rotorua way. That was quite clear, that some of the components wouldn't be something that would fit culturally in New Zealand or our landscape. So it'll be quite a different event that's put on here on the 1st of the 3rd. And the Mayor of Boreang is intent on bringing quite a delegation over, and he would love to bring a cultural component over to New Zealand. So the agreement that was signed was really the signing of that exchange of product from Boreang, and it opens up the opportunity for more export product from New Zealand to go into Korea. So thank you for clarifying that for us. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could you please clarify in this morning's paper under the article on the topic, it seems that you approved an expenditure of a considerable sum for the purchase of Boreang mud, and I wondered, is that coming from ratepayer funds? And secondly, why you approved it without it coming through this council? Could you perhaps clarify that for us? Thank you.
Stuart, would you speak to that? I did not approve that, but Stuart, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, so the funding is coming from the $1.3 million odd that's been supplied by the by central government as part of building the event over the next 5 years. There's also sponsorship money as well. So there's no funding from ratepayers for this event.
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you be able to get the Daily Post then perhaps to do a retraction? Because it definitely implies in their article this morning that Council has approved the funding of this, and it should be government has approved the funding of it, perhaps.
Yeah, look, we can certainly do that. Yeah.
Quite clearly in the article in the New Zealand Herald this morning, it quite clearly states that the $90,000 for the mud is funded out of the Major Events Fund that central government has forwarded to the Rotorua District Council, and I thought it was just a natural part of this event. I certainly want to hear from Councillor Maxwell too in terms of the event itself and how it can be developed over the next 5 years, and also staff. But I thought it was pretty clear that the money was coming from central government.
Councillor Donaldson, and then we'll have a comment if there are no more questions.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate when it's implied that it's right for councillors to ask questions about expenditure from the public purse, but you know, with major events, we put an event management organisation or committee or board in place, and then we leave them to it and we get a report back. So I'm just wondering if officers can let us know what the event management arrangements or entity is for this festival. Thanks.
Could you answer that, Craig, for us? Because it's a very good point.
Please forgive me, Dave, could you just run through that question again?
I can paraphrase it. What's the structure that you've set up to manage the event?
So Council obviously signed this event off, I think, over 2 years ago now, because originally it was going to be for last sort of Christmassy period. So there's a governance group that operates that Council sought the expertise. So there's people representative of major events across New Zealand within the area. There's also the CFO from Council's a member of that group to keep an eye on that sort of stuff. And they meet, I think it's 6 weekly now, in terms of keeping abreast of that event. So there's that group. There's also a legacy group that's been formed that's just started work this year as well, and they're looking at ways of how they can leverage the event into the future. So there is two governance groups. It's actually been delivered by a event company called Event Engine that was contracted by Council to deliver the event, and they are in full swing right now. They were part of the party that went to Boreang to gain that sort of first-hand experience of how that event goes. So there's quite a few layers of governance in there. Yeah.
Maxwell, would you like to give your view? Because remembering all of us only had the pictures of what we had presented when we approved the event.
Yes. Kia ora koutou. Ni hao sa shang hao, anyang hasayo. Wanted to first of all thank Council for approving of the journey, especially to going to China, to Wuzhong and Nanjing and Rotorua town. And also to acknowledge the tremendous help that our own honorary ambassador for Rotorua, David Chin, who looked after us in the 4 to 5 days in China. But in Boryong, first of all, apologies for lateness. I was held up with 2 interviews this morning. One was Mike Hosking and our local Daily Post. So what I do want to say is that you have to see it for oneself. I thought of the Mud Festival and you get a different impression, but to actually see it in operation. And they've been going 20 years now. They're celebrating their 20 years, and I was just so impressed with the amount of Westerners that are actually attending the event, and Koreans, of course, and other Asians. And then, sadly, our mayor had to come back, and I congratulate mountain biking for the award. We received that up there, Dave and Mayor. We're absolutely rapt about that. But we went on to another event also on the way home to close their festival with the Te Arawa performers, and that went down very well as well. But what I do want to say, I think Rotorua is going to benefit from this in a big way. Our first one is going to be challenging because, like in Boryong, their first one wasn't easy as well because of people wanted to get their heads around the concept. But the infrastructure that has been built around in Boryong since that festival started, I'm talking about new 5-star hotels and places that are along where the actual event happens, and our part in it, I was so pleased to be part of, and the cultural aspect was something new that they've never had in the 20 years that they've been going there. They have their own major artists, and one small regret is we missed seeing their top artist because we had left the day we were leaving. He was on the following night. We were on the opening night, and that is the Sai, who does the Gangnam style dance, and all the young ones in the group wanted to see that. But so yes, as I wish the Mayor said, there's a full report coming, but I thank Council for allowing us to play our part there to promote our event in December. Kia ora koutou.
And I felt in the interest, being so heightened by the media, that it was important that we got this on the record. So thank you, Craig and Stuart, for coming. We return now to page 46 of your order paper, recommendation from other committees. Could I have a mover and a seconder that the report recommendations from other committees be received? Councillor Hunt, seconded Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. And I'm going to read and seek a mover and a seconder for each motion on its own. Recommendation 1, I ask for a mover and a seconder that the spatial plan discussion document that Council supports entering into a housing accord with Government under the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Act 2013. Moved, Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Gould. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. The motion is open for discussion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I sincerely hope with the environment that we're living in at the moment, with all sorts of promises flying right, left and centre, that we are involved in this with our eyes wide open. I want to make sure that by joining this, we aren't committing ourselves at this stage to major amounts of money that we have not budgeted for, and I look forward to the reports coming back through the committee. I think this is vitally important for our future. We signalled it in Vision 2030 that community housing and other housing was a major priority, and I'm comfortable with that, but I just want to make sure that this council around this table is fully informed of what we're getting ourselves into, what commitments have been made, if any, and I think that that should come back at the highest possible level when this accord is put into action. I'll be interested to hear what staff's take on that is,
Okay.
because I don't think it was really explained at the committee, or some of us were comfortable with the actual in-depth detail of what this actually means.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stewart. I gave my commitment at that committee meeting that all councillors would be involved. There was no detail at that stage, so JP, would you like to outline the process going forward?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Councillor Sturt, as Chair of O&M Committee, raised a couple of discussion points during that report back, and most importantly was the request that we have a workshop before we move to a situation where you're looking to adopt a draft spatial plan. We've now scheduled that workshop, councillors, for the 3rd of August. After the next O&M meeting. So at that stage will also be an opportunity for Mr Weston and myself to report back on discussions we're having with MB around the housing accord, and just to go through with you some of the proposed wording that goes into those accords and some of those implications. So two opportunities within that workshop, but most importantly getting a feel for how we're translating that community feedback into a draft spatial plan.
Further questions? Yes, Councillor Gould, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I take it that this council and the committee levels will get, at the committee level will get regular updates about this particular program, because housing is a very, very important issue with the Rotorua people, and it's something which we need to not put on the back burner but keep it prominent all the time.
I won't give that undertaking yet. We haven't yet entered the accord, so but you will have the workshop about what will be the way in which this Rotorua district will go forward, and then after that is the time to be given updates. But getting the accord signed is our top priority, and I want councillors to be involved in that, so that you may have some thinking in there that we haven't covered off through the official process between MB and our staff. So thank you, JP. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary carried. We should have the discussion before we put the motion. The second motion, a mover and a seconder for recommendation 2, which is the Class 4 gambling and board venue policy deliberations. 1, that council adopt the Class 4 gambling and board venue policy as shown in attachment 2 in your order paper, and 2, that council reviews the Class 4 gambling and board venue policy after 3 years. Yes.
Madam Chair, I wish to move that, but with an amendment.
Yeah. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Your
Put the amendment.
The amendment that I wish to put is with a reduction in the cap to 350 machines. The reason for that is quite simple. We have now successfully isolated the problem that we had before, where if you relocated, the cap could cause existing businesses to lose existing machines. That was a serious problem. Now we've isolated that successfully in the policy. There is no necessity whatsoever to retain the cap at a level which is much higher than the national standard. And I think we need to send a very clear message to the people of Rotorua that we want the number of pokie machines to come down, and we want the impact on the poorer people in our community to be less.
Thank you. So you've put the amendment. I've allowed you to speak to the amendment at the same time. That's all right. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment before we vote on the amendment? Councillor Gould.
Madam Chair, I know I'm happy with the amendment going down to 350 machines. That's fine.
That we're not don't have unintended consequences. So could I take a bit of advice? I think it's wise with the implications of that amendment, Councillor Kent, so that all councillors understand it, if our Chief Executive could point out a mechanism around this, if you could.
Councillors, the comment that I just made to Her Worship the Mayor was that my recommendation to you would be to refer this matter back to the committee for further discussion. The reason for that being is that my understanding and looking at the policy and the reading of it is that there does need to be a review of the integrity of the policy, and having on one hand a mechanism that protects effectively machine numbers, and then on the other hand a shrinking lid cap, are effectively running against each other in the policy. And this needs some fairly careful consideration as to whether or not simply reducing the cap results in an effective and viable policy. My recommendation to you is that you would be wise, if you wish to consider this, is to take a little bit more time to ask officers to actually report back to you on the implications of this decision, and then to actually examine that within the context of the committee.
Policy, the advice of the Chief Executive is usually to assist us in our deliberation. There are two options here. We have in part 2 there that it was to be reviewed in 3 years. And if you kept the substantive motion without the amendment, that may be the time that you consider the cap or refer it back to a committee. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, the reduction in the cap needs to be an amendment to 1, not to 2, because we're looking at to reduce the cap effective immediately, not in 3 years' time, which is the way it reads at the moment. Secondly, I did raise precisely this topic at our strategy, policy and finance meeting, and I did recommend at the time that it go back to staff for clarification. At that time, they said that was not necessary and that we should push it through at this meeting. So I am now following their advice, which they're now countermanding.
You may have been successful, Councillor Kent, don't worry. You know, and that's the way we've got to walk this through quite carefully. JP, do you want to speak to that, please?
Just picking up on the Chief Executive's comments, what we do with moving the cap substantially down is actually it's a mechanism which is disabled by the mechanisms we've put in the rest of the policy, and so what we were looking to do in the policy was to say you can't relocate gambling machines within the suburbs. You can only relocate back to the CBD. So if the decision is to move venues, a suburban venue must move back to the CBD. The second part of that was to protect CBD venues from problems around their current leases or building condition or whatever. So we had a policy within that, or wording that enabled any venue to move around the CBD without suffering any implications about decreasing the number of machines. So, so to achieve a reduction in the number of machines, a venue must close and not be re-established. So that's just the clarification. So at the moment we haven't seen venues close, we've seen venues generally relocating. So so as a mechanism, we've got one set of mechanisms, which is to say we want to act positively to move you out of the suburbs. So that's the core of the policy focus. The cap then becomes this question: is it achievable within this framework? So I think that's where we seem to have two pieces working slightly different. So the only way that the number of machines will come down is if a venue closes and does not reopen.
I have a concern, if I speak to this, that quite rightly at committee, I think was the time to say back to, refer it back to a further review. I don't think, given the weight of the submissions, because they were pretty balanced either side, it's the time of us as elected members today to accept an amendment that could have unforeseen outcome that we don't intend. I think the high-level principle, you're absolutely right, Councillor Kent, we wanted them moved from the suburbs. We were all in agreement about that, and then it was a pretty even split about the cap, and we've got to make sure we're doing absolutely the right thing that reflects the high-level policy principle that we felt, and I have a belief that I would not support that amendment, and that I think we've made the substantive move anyway through our policy as we would have voted without the amendment, that we're trying to move it from the suburbs and then look at it in 3 years. I think is a sensible way forward. I just want to signal that. I really don't know the value of going back to offices again, and we did discuss that in committee. Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Your Worship. Point of order. I have moved a motion which includes the reduction to 350 machines. Procedure requires that motion to actually be put.
It can be put. It will be put. Councillor Sturt?
Yeah, I've got to take issue. I don't think the integrity of the policy is compromised by reducing the cap to 350. Having read it under page 54, the number of gambling machines proposed for the venue being able to be met within the overall district cap maximum of 350 machines is determined by council specified in Section E. Section E states the number of gambling machines operated within the district shall not exceed 350 with this amendment. Whereas society surrenders or otherwise ceases to hold its Class 4 gambling venue licence in relation to a particular venue, council consent may be granted to that society and to any other society in relation to a different licensed venue, subject to the new licensed venue being within the CBD. That hasn't changed. Number of gambling machines proposed for the venue complies with Section D, and you can read that in Section D. And F, the number of gambling machines proposed for the venue being able to be met within the overall district cap, 350, as determined by council. Madam Chair, whilst I hear what you're saying, this is the highest level that this policy can be changed at this council table, and I don't think we're compromising that high-level policy principle you talked about earlier. This is where we need to make the decision. We had this submission, so we're not doing anything that wasn't discussed in the submissions or at the committee level. I think it's totally appropriate that in those areas that I talked about, the 380 just changed to 350 and review it in 3 years' time. It's not meaning changing the emphasis of removing them out of the suburbs, because that was the clear message that we've had in social media. So I think by reducing it to 350, it sends a clear message. One, that we not only want to bring them out of the CBD, but within the CBD, over time, the cap be reduced from 380 down to 350. So I think I implore my colleagues to support the motion. I don't want to go back to another committee, because then we'll have to go out and consult with the community again. We've got the core information. It was made in the submissions. This is the time and place to make that decision.
Absolutely agree, and we will. But this is an amendment to the substantive motion. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Order, it is not an amendment to the substantive motion. It is the substantive motion.
No, you've made an amendment. Oh, you're right.
That was just a recommendation before. I have moved a motion.
That's all right. We will vote on it too. Does anyone else wish to speak to it? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said before, I'm in favour of the 350 cap. But what we have got a problem in the suburbs, and I think one of the solutions may be to extend the CBD down to Trade Central to give an opportunity for one of the suburb pokie machine operators to move into that particular area if they want to. And that should help reduce one of the sites out of the suburbs.
I think we've got to be very careful. I'd ask JP to answer this, but if you're going to extend the definition of the CBD for one policy, that could be very, very unintended when you look at our inner city redesign project, and it's very clear from your planning perspective. The CBD is a definition in our district plan. You don't want to alter it just for a gambling policy. Do you want to speak to that, JP?
Madam Chair, the Rotorua Central is within the defined area that we've included within the policy. If you go to page 52, councillors. Oh, Trade Central.
Yeah, Trade Central.
Councillors, we followed our inner city zones, as I stated at our previous committee meeting, with the view that that gives us a particular definition that's defensible and follows a number of other sort of planning parameters, which is included from the district plan. So that's why we haven't included Trade Central. If you start opening it up to other areas which don't meet our district plan classifications of what we see as inner city, we're starting to open the door there as to commercial 2 or commercial 6, I think it is, the definition out of the district plan. So I'd be reluctant to see that for the reasons that you open up the justification of why isn't it included now in other areas.
I'm now going to put the oh, sorry, Councillor Hunt.
I argued very vehemently last time that we shouldn't send it back to committee, that we'd thrashed it out. And while I understand entirely the sentiments of reducing the cap to 350, and I think it's a really good feel-good factor for our community, I pragmatically believe it's actually not going to achieve anything. Our last policy didn't achieve anything. We have tried to recognise where our issues lie and balance the argument, and our issues lie with suburban ones. We've tried to give them a way to not completely lose their business and to migrate, if that is the case, into the CBD, because these are legal entities, like them or not. And while we can move that to 350, it does fly in the face of the other policy we've put in, that moving will not, if you move into the CBD, if you move within the CBD, it won't reduce that number. So it could go in there, but it will have, in my opinion, absolutely nil effect. So I'm pragmatically, I'm actually going to vote against it, because in my heart of hearts, I can't vote for something just because it sounds good and it'll make us look good, if it has no substance behind it. The intentions are honourable, and I completely accept that and support my colleagues in their desire. I too would like to see the number of pokey machines reduced. I don't believe this is going to be the mechanism that affects that change. So I cannot support it in that sense. We moved down, we wanted to recognise we have 382 machines in our community at the moment. We argued to leave it at 382, to leave it at 380. Which is a reduction in 2, and you can say, well, what's 2? 2's better than nothing, and we got very little. The only reduction in machines we had last time were businesses closing due to their own circumstances. So to get these machines out of our community, this is not the policy to do that. We are managing those places the best we can with this policy, and the cap we have. 3 years is a very short time in politics to look at another, to revisit this. And if we find that we've had no migration from the suburbs to the inner city, if we find that those problems have risen, and we saw the graph that in fact even with the reduction in machines, the problem gambling didn't tail off, so machine numbers aren't necessarily related, then we'll have another opportunity to revisit this. We have chewed this over considerably at committee level, and so while I, as I have said, support my colleagues, I am going to vote against it, because principally I feel that I would just be doing that so that it was a feel-good, and I can't in all honesty do that.
Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I do have to support the amendment that Councillor Kent has put up. We did thoroughly debate this, and a number of us took the stance that we weren't doing enough with this. The policy in the past hasn't worked. I don't believe we have been harsh enough. I don't believe we have been brave enough to make significant changes. So yes, this is a significant change, but it's one that we signalled quite deliberately that we wanted to make, and we were told, okay, well, let's bring it to council and discuss further. So this is the discussion we've had. I have kept my same stance on this. I believe many others have, and so I will be supporting this amendment because I think, well, we will review it in 3 years' time. If this didn't work, we'll change it again. But we haven't done enough for our community, and I feel like this is a good way to start.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I'm neither here nor there with the number. If we were serious about reducing machines, we'd have imposed the sinking lid policy, and we got a clear signal from significant sector of the community that was going to have real issues for our community. I agree with Councillor Hunt that 350, 380, it's in 3 years' time, we're not going to see significant change. So I'm not worried either way, really, with it. I think, like Councillor Hunt, I would vote against it only on the fact that I really think we're sort of tinkering at the last minute and to no effect. And so, you know, I think if we're honest about getting the machine numbers down, and, you know, the view we got was that a balanced approach with harm reduction by exiting or incentivising a move from the suburbs was the way to go, that we would stick with it. So I'll probably vote against it, I think.
Anybody else wish to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hear what Councillor Hunt has said, but I actually disagree. And the reason I disagree is the policy hasn't worked because of the linkage between the relocations and the sinking cap. That has been the root cause of the stumbling block. We have decided that we want pokie machines from the suburban areas relocated into the CBD or not relocated at all. This revised policy will do that. We want to stop new businesses opening up all over the place with pokie machines in. That is why we've got a cap. But we've got a risk under holding the cap at 380, which is the existing number of machines, that if any business closes, another one can open with just the same number, and we can't stop it. So we're not achieving anything at all that way. What I've suggested by bringing the cap down to 350 allows existing businesses to relocate to the CBD without losing their businesses and without being put out of business, which is good. It has also allowed someone in the CBD to relocate to new premises without losing any of their machines, without losing their business and closing them down, which is good. But if any one of these businesses closes, no one gets to use their number of machines. They're gone, history. We have then effectively achieved something instead of nothing. So unless we reduce the cap substantially to stop new machines taking the place of any that close down, we're not achieving anything at all. So I urge my fellow councillors on that point to consider this very, very carefully. If we leave the number at 380, which is the number of existing machines, we might as well not have a policy. If we reduce it to 350, anything that closes is gone, history, not replaced. And that is why I have proposed the reduction. Thank you.
I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? No. Show of hands, I think. Yeah, division called for. All those in favour, please raise their hands. Against? Yeah. staff reports, electoral systems and 2017 Rotorua Rural Community Board by-election. I'd like to welcome Warwick Lamp. It's great to have our electoral officer here. I didn't recognise him because he's in a suit and tie, but he's polished up beautifully for us this morning. And it's great to see you here, Warwick. If councillors please look at page 59. I need first a mover and a seconder that the report Electoral Systems 2017 Rotorua Rural Community Board by-election be received. Please. Thank you. Councillor Hunt, seconded Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Now, JP, if you'd like to overview the report, and I'm sure you'll be helped by Warwick Lamp.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors, as you see, we're responding to the resignation of Mr McLaughlin from the Rural Community Board. However, there's implications in how we conduct the by-election for the subsequent elections for council. So those have been detailed in the report. So Warwick's in attendance just to answer off any of the questions about the wider processes around some of those other methods of running our elections. So we're just happy to answer any questions at this stage. But really, it's the focus is on the by-election and the timing around the by-election, but more specifically then the method of undertaking those elections for at least the next two main elections of council.
So while Warwick's here, somebody must have a question. I'd like to start actually, Warwick. One of the issues is the coincidence of a general election running at the same time, and a little bit of confusion that could occur with potential rural board members wanting to put up hoardings. And well, I think I could see that if I was a political candidate for any party in a general election, you'd get a bit muddled with our district council rural board going at the same time. And is there any way that you can manage this?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Good question. The issue that we have is that when a resignation is received, the legislation requires us to run the election as soon as practicable. So, as that has happened, the time frame that we have set down is for the election to start next week, with election day being Friday the 27th of October. That then triggers the date as to when election hoardings can go up for a council election or by-election, which is 2 months prior. So technically, signs could go up on, the 27th of August, albeit a few days before when nominations close. I guess the first thing to consider is, will the by-election be contested? If there's only one candidate, then there's no issue. If it is contested, then those candidates can, pretty much from the time nominations close, put up their hoardings. But as you pointed out, Your Worship, the national elections is completed on Saturday the 23rd of September, from memory. Those signs for those, of course, are up now and come down the day before, so the 22nd of September. So technically, yes, you're correct, there is a time period as to when by-election candidates could have hoardings up at the same time as the national elections. In essence, but I think in reality, I can't speak for candidates, but common sense, I would think, could well prevail, and the candidates that are standing for a by-election may well realise that and have the opportunity to wait until after the national election is finished to save any confusion. But that would be a decision for those candidates to make.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Gould.
Thank you very much for your answer, and thank you, Madam Chair. On page 64 of our agenda, you've got for Tuesday, the 5th of November 2017, public notice advising day of election candidates' names, etc. Can it be delayed 2 weeks? Because that would make it out to the 19th, and that would be pretty close to when the hoardings from the national election are taken down.
So in effect, you're saying start the by-election process a couple of weeks later. That is possible. As I said before, the Act requires that the by-election be held as soon as practicable. The resignation was last week, and so it's generally accepted that you start it a couple of weeks after that. But it is possible to put it back 2 weeks. It just means that the community board then doesn't have a representative for a longer time, and that's something to consider.
Confirming that we can do that.
Yes, you can do that. It's just really a case of what would that achieve.
Your Worship, I'd argue against that. I think if anything, and if there is an election, running it in tandem with a central government election might get us a better voter turnout in local body voting, but the two procedures are quite separate. If there is an election for community board, it'll be by way of postal voting, so quite separate. And, we're talking about a very sort of, I guess, the rural district. I think it's a very small issue and a small concern for me. I think we should get on with it.
Councillor Hunt and then Councillor
I'd like to support what Councillor Donaldson said. I can't see any point. I think the rural, virtually every billboard you see is colour-coded, so even if you didn't read the letters, you know which party it is for national elections. And I think that those people in the rural community know the sort of people who are going to be standing for to represent them, because it's not going to be someone unknown in that environment. It is a postal vote. There may not even be any billboards. It may not even be contested. So I actually think they're smarter than that. I think they're quite capable of working out which people are standing for which election for those who vote, and anyone who isn't may not be a voter anyway. So yeah, don't think it's a problem.
I actually don't have a question. I was actually trying to have the best outcome, and somehow Mr. Lamp might be able to help me. Personally, I think we're dealing with two different things here, and so I can indicate that I prefer the first past the post. I prefer alphabetical option, and for the community board by-election, I'd love us to save money, the 19,000 that is said that it would cost, and somehow can it be worked that we somehow in this motion that goes forward that we are able to perhaps give council or give the board an opportunity to nominate somebody to go on there to save money. That's where I'm coming from.
Look, just a small oversight. I need a mover and a seconder for this motion first. We have. Yeah, we've received the report. That's right. We'll carry on with the discussion. Sorry, Councillor Maxwell, had you finished? Yeah. Yeah.
And you haven't got a motion for him to speak to.
Yeah.
He's only got the reports been received.
That we received the report. We haven't yet had a mover for the substantive motion. Could I have a mover, please? Okay. And that's all we're speaking to at the moment is the timetable.
I think there's only purple, pink and orange, I think, colours left for any confusion to be abated. Although I think ACT might be orange, but who cares about them anyway? So I don't think there'll be any confusion. Most of the stuff will be done through through online or the media. So I don't think that's a huge issue. I think let's just get on with it.
I'd like to speak to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Kent, you're first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to play the devil's advocate here. This council actually determined that we should have a board. This council actually determined the number that can go on the board, so why can't this council determine that the board is doing a damn good job the way it's currently constituted and running, and why can't we continue that way with one light till the next election? What is the legal basis for that not happening, please?
No. Warwick, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. No, the legislation is very clear. When there is an extraordinary vacancy, council has no choice but to have a by-election. You can't hold the vacancy unless it was 12 months out from the election.
Warwick, and I'd like to speak to this. I think this position should be filled. That's democracy. We were very clear about having a rural board with a full complement. If we just say we could leave it or postpone till after the general election, then we're not allowing that board to work at its full capacity. And actually, the rural board covers a very big hump of our community, north, south, east and west. And it's very important that they get that they feel they've got the active participation at that board that is representative of that geographic area. So I'll certainly be supporting this timetable. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's been wonderful, the ideas that have flowed this morning. But have we spoken to the rural board to see what suggestion they've been put forward, or whether they want to say something on this? Invite them as a guest to hear their comments on this?
No, we haven't, because we must do what is right within the Constitution. And that's why Warwick Lamp is here today. Okay. We can't come to cosy arrangements. That is not the appropriate way to manage democracy. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Warwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, at the end of the day, it comes back to the legislation, and the legislation says that once an extraordinary vacancy arises, then the election officer must conduct the election as soon as practicable, and that means that we make arrangements to call for nominations and prepare the roll and the nomination documents within a practical period of time. Usually with council by-elections, that is a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks max. And so, you know, the business of council and the committee board continues, so we do that to get a person in place as quick as we can under the legislation. And that's really the nub of it. It's simple as that.
So Liz, I'd just like to add, and probably just extends on what Warwick has said. If you recall, we didn't actually have an election for the community board area. We had enough nominations to fill the positions that were available. So if in other options you'd had the next highest polling candidate, that there is opportunities, if there had been an election with more than the required number of people, for us to have moved to the next highest polling candidate within the rules. No, not at all. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'd assumed that was, but rumour we did not have an election.
Councillor Kent, and then I'm going to take this motion separately. We'll vote on that because this is confirming the timetable. And then I'll put 3 next. Thank you, Councillor Kent. You're right.
I was going to speak on 3 and 4.
Yeah, we'll speak to that next. So I'm going to put the motion that Council confirm the timetable for the Rotorua Community Board by-election as outlined in page 64. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you. And now it's for us 3 that Council adopt first past the post or single transferable vote for the next 2 local elections. That's 219, 222. We've got to choose one option. Right, I need a mover first. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Seconded, Councillor Kent.
Number 3?
No. Just that we now discuss the resolution. Oh, okay. All right. You've got to choose, so you can speak to it.
So I'm moving a motion on number 3 that first past the post be the preferred option.
Second.
I'll second that.
Oh, good, Rob.
Does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor Donaldson.
Not speak, Your Worship. Question. So it says for the next 2 local elections, 2019 and 2022, is this right across the local government election for council? Is this for council, Lakes Community Board as well, that we're recommending first past the post?
Okay.
Could you clarify that, or is it just for the rural board?
No, this is entirely for the triennial council elections in 2016, 2019, and any by-elections from that period.
Throughout the country.
The particular by-election, the community board by-election on now, is covered by the previous resolution 6 years ago, so that is first past the post. And so this one takes an effect from the next triennial.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, do we have speakers that wish to speak to this? Councillor Gould, then Councillor Hunt.
Question, Madam Chair. When first past the post, does that cover the election at large or a ward system? Was that still to be decided at a future date?
No, I've heard the clarification from Warwick that this is our chance now to decide STV, or first past the post, for this by-election and 219 and 222.
I realise it's first past the post, that's fine, but what I'm saying, with the first past the post, is this council going for a ward system election, or is it going at large for the candidates at the whole of the Rotorua?
No, it's not the resolution. Could you clarify that for us?
Your
I'm
Worship,
not quite sure where Councillor Gould's coming from.
I'm just looking back past Your Worship towards Una. Look, we did a representation review, and that was the decision-making process where we established the community board. My understanding that lasts us for the next 6 years, so we do not get to relitigate our representation in our wards.
Only that we're discussing in this. Warwick.
Just to answer the direct question though, yes, FPP is for any council elections going forward, FPP or STV, whether it's a by-election or whether it's a triennial, for at-large or the wards or the community board, any component of the council elections is set for that election system for the next 6 years.
Well, I have a question and then I'd like to speak to it. So, Warwick, for those boards that, councils that have moved to STV that you've listed, has there been any increase in voter turnout? Has it been neutral, or has it followed the usual pattern of gradual decline that's around the country? So, has it actually made a difference?
That's a good question. I haven't looked specifically at the voting returns on those specific councils. But in general, the electoral system by itself doesn't really reflect in the turnout as to whether it makes a difference or not. It's more about the political issues, the mayoral election, the things that are happening in the council. For example, Wellington City Council has been STV for a couple of elections, but last time their return went up by 10%. Because there was a strong mayoral race. The difference between FPP and STV some time ago didn't really make any difference. So I think, to answer your question, the electoral system doesn't have a significant impact, if any, on the voter turnout.
I'm actually going to speak against FPP, and I remember in 2011 I also spoke against FPP. There's a couple of reasons. One, I believe that it's, as it lists on page 63, it is a more representative electoral system. It's simply fairer for everybody. And the other is that I think it's easier for people to number from 1 to 10. The fact that in our voting papers, particularly here, the DHB papers go out with ours at the same time, and you have to number theirs 1 to 10, for their candidates, means that anyone picking up the paper will get in the habit of numbering their candidates. At the moment, there's quite a lot of confusion and quite a lot of discarded, well, a small percentage of discarded votes, because someone starts ticking or someone starts numbering, and they want to vote, but we haven't actually made it easy, considering ours go out together. I think that because it's not going to have a material difference for our voters, as has been expressed by Mr. Matt, that it's unlikely to matter particularly to whether we get an increased or reduced turnout. But where it will matter is for the ease of those people who do choose to vote. And I think that it's an opportune time, this by-election has brought an opportune moment for us to move to STV, along with those other councils, Dunedin, Marlborough, Wellington City, Rotorua, Kapiti Coast, Palmerston North, Greater Wellington Regional, and all district health boards. I think this is a move for future-proofing our electoral cycle and hopefully making it easier for people to vote. And I think that first past the post is quite an outdated mode, and I'll be quite disappointed if we hang on to it without seriously considering giving this, it's for 6 years, seriously giving this a try this time round. We weren't brave enough in 2011, and I hope that we'll be brave enough now.
I'll just provide a bit of clarification to that. There was one comment you made about the decision for this by-election. This by-election is not covered by this decision. This by-election is FPP. So this is going forward. Just your comment around the perception of the confusion between FPP and STV. You're correct. Currently, Rotorua Lakes Council's elections are FPP, tick the box. Lakes DHB is number the candidates. Roughly the number of candidates, number of voters who tick the DHB instead of numbering is around about 8 to 9%. Its national average is about 8%. So when people get their tick the box on the FPP, come to the STV for the DHB, 9% ticket instead of number it, so it becomes an informal vote. For those councils that are STV, the ones that are listed in that report, of course there's no changing of voting system, so it's ranked the candidates all the way through. The difference that makes is that the informal rate for all of those elections is about the same as what it is for FPP, which is around about 1 to 1.5%. So in the DHB's case, for example, there would be 6 or 7% of the votes that were informal would not be, because people wouldn't need to change the system and wouldn't get confused between the two.
I just add another dimension that this really isn't an option that we need to be discussing today, because the by-election, which is the purposes that we've agreed with the timetable, is first past the post. So the item could lie on the table, and it could. This is an option, and it is an electoral option that we've got until staff bring back a report at a later date. The election that we will make the difference on is 219 and 222. Where we discuss that. So this item 3 and 4 could lie on the table and come back to us at a later date.
Just clarify that as well.
Yes.
Yes, it can, but council has to publicly notify by the 19th of September what the position is. Council doesn't have to make a resolution about FPP or STV.
No.
Can do nothing.
Yeah.
It just has to state, if it does nothing, then FPP is the status quo. It just has to state in the public notice that FPP is the electoral system. Then the community does have the opportunity to put a petition in place to require a poll and go through that process as set out in the report. Having said that, council can resolve to make a decision one way or the other. It just has to be before the 12th of September, so that council then meets the legislative requirement to advertise it by the 19th of September. So there's not a lot of time in that respect. Absolutely.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Warwick, just some more clarification. You mentioned the term informal votes. Do you mean invalid rather than informal? So if under an STV people just tick the candidate they prefer rather than numbering, does that invalidate the vote, or I don't understand what informal vote means? And my other question for clarification is around what Councillor Hunt said about numbering 1 to 10. If there were, like we had with the Energy Charitable Trust, 44 candidates, you can you can order them 1 to 44 right the way through. Is that right?
Correct. STV allows voters to rank as many or as few candidates as they wish. So in the council election, in the council at large, and you might have 40 candidates, you can rank 10, you can rank 1, you can rank all 40. Whereas FPP, you can only tick 10. So in that respect, that really is the nub of the difference. STV allows you to rank as few or as many candidates as you wish. As far as your comment about informal and invalid, that's just my terminology. Informal and invalid is exactly the same. If a voter ticks an STV election, then the vote is invalid and isn't included at all.
So just for further clarification, what you're saying is that in districts or TLAs where both systems, or both the DHB and the council, are elected via STV, there are fewer invalid votes for the DHB and for council. Is that right?
When if you look at informal rates across the country, an informal rate on an FPP election is about 1.5%. An informal rate on a DHB election where the council was FPP is about 9%. When the council was STV and the DHB is STV, it's about 1.52%. It's roughly the same. So the DHB informal rate comes down, the council informal rate stays about the same.
Yeah, and my understanding is the DHB can't change because that's legislation. And I think, like Councillor Hunt last time, I voted for STV as well.
Well, the STV decision for DHBs is by legislation, originally made by the Ministry of Health back in 2004, I think it was. So it's been in place since then.
There's another issue that I think before we put this, because this is an issue that I think the community would want their say on. Yet today, because we've got a by-election, I feel a bit pushed into deciding the method of voting for 2 elections out. Well, no, I do. And I think that the community deserves to have their say on it. You've put some quite compelling evidence before us on what we're all wanting is better voter turnout and fewer informal votes. And we thought that we would get better voter turnout by having a rural board and a Lakes Community Board and also Te Tato Board. We thought that was our mechanism for getting a better spread that STV usually delivers, because it's people in those rural areas that seldom are able to get anybody up on first past the post system. So I think we've added another dimension into the way our district has an option to vote, that has been, we're all enjoying the fruits of having those boards representation at committee. So it's quite a different time to make the decision about STV and first past the post. And I personally would prefer to see that come back to us and lie on the table. But you're saying we have to make the decision by the 19th.
If council is going to make a decision on the electoral system, then it has to be by the 12th of September. Because then council has to publicly notify it by the 19th. If council does nothing, makes no decision, leaves as it is, then the status quo, being FPP, then is what is put in the public notice for the 19th of September. At that point in the public notice, the mechanism kicks in for the community to request to have a petition, to have a poll, and then go down that process. So the community does have that opportunity under the legislation to have its say at its instigation once that public notice is made.
Which is my preference. Councillor Gould?
Chair, if you want to make 3 and 4 lie on the table for the last council meeting in August, because it's before the 12th of September, we have to decide today whether for the rural board you're going for an alphabetical option or a random option.
or let it lie on the table? Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, Your Worship, if there's room to have this come before SPNF for a discussion, points 3 and 4, and have the board members at the table, then I would support that within the timetable.
You support that procedural motion. So you're putting that as a motion. Thank you. And you're seconding that.
If I may speak to that, Madam Chair, so that we get the representation from our partner boards, community, rural and Te Tato, and then we have a full and frank discussion around the complete table on what voting, because they'll then be able to have this opportunity to talk to their communities about it. So that's why I'm supporting the procedural motion, and as long as it comes back, because we have been caught in other years when we've run out of time, and I would hate that to happen this time when we've ended up simply putting in a notice in the paper by September saying, oh, sorry, status quo reigns again because we didn't get time to debate it. So as long as it comes to the next meeting and we don't leave ourselves short of time, I fully support that.
To speak to that motion, I'll certainly be voting in favour of that procedural motion. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to vote against that procedural motion for one simple thing, and that is the less confusion, the better. If you want people to actually vote, don't start changing systems on them, because if you do, you will cause havoc. We have enough trouble with people counting to 10 anyway, so to try and get them to count to 40 or whatever is going to be beyond the pale. Seriously, I see absolutely no reason for wasting further debate on these issues. I'm against letting it lie on the table.
Yeah, I will also vote against the procedural motion. It's in the hands of this council, this body, to make the decision. And I smell a rat. Is it a delaying tactic to try and engender STV as a better alternative to first past the post? So I'll stick with Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Kent's original motion. I don't think it needs to lie on the table.
I do take objection to your implication that you smell a rat. We've had Warwick Lamp come before us. We're trying to make the right democratic decision where we as a council, which is now full and inclusive council, with our community boards and Te Tato, we're only asking in the procedural motion that they be at the table when we have this discussion, and we then seek wider feedback from the community. I think that's a much more inclusive council myself. You're only seeking a delay for it to come back to the next Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee. September, when's the next?
It's the 10th of August, councillors. So 10th of August.
10th of August. We're not asking for much of a delay. We're only asking that we then have that full committee. And we've always prided ourselves on being inclusive and having those committees at the table. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to put the procedural motion that the motion lie on the table to the next Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? One, do you wish your vote recorded against? And Raj, you wish your vote recorded against? Well, the procedural motion is carried. Thank you, and thank you, Warwick.
Your Worship, just one issue. The issue around order of candidates, alphabetical, pseudo-random or random, a decision around that for the community board election does need to be made prior to us calling for nominations next week.
So we'll make...
Currently it's random.
Yep.
Which was what it was 2000 before. And so we just do need to have that confirmed. Is it going to be random for the community board election next week, or alpha or pseudo?
You'll move random?
Random, Madam Chair.
You'll second that. Is there any discussion on that, Councillor Sturt?
Providing we're not making a decision, we're going to do that at SPNF. I'll be advocating we go back to alphabetical, because I read an item yesterday from the government that they have signalled that online voting will occur. So I'm sure they'll want it standardised, so it's it's pretty well. So I would prefer that we go back to alphabetical. I mean,
Warwick,
it's no,
could-
no
yeah.
personal advantage to me because I'm S. I'm down the bottom anyway. And Kelnan was C, and she didn't get elected, so it doesn't matter.
Let's clarify for us. I mean, these are big decisions. When we thought we were talking only about the rural board by-election, we're now making decisions other than 3, which we've agreed. It'll come back to us. But 4, if we don't vote on 4, it becomes as it was in the last election. That's right. So it can lie on the table.
So you don't need.
We don't need to.
So long only if you wanted to change it.
So we do not need a motion unless we wish to change it. Is everybody very clear on that? We'll just leave it. Thank you. Thank you, Warwick. I think these were more substantive issues than we first thought when we were looking only at the rural board by-election, but they're very good for us to be considering. Thank you, and thank you for coming up from Wellington.
No problem at all, except that I live in Tauranga, so...
Oh, well, there you are.
Quite easy for me to
Cheeky.
come here. But if you require me to attend the committee meeting to add flesh to this discussion, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Oh, well, as you come from Tauranga, you're welcome. No mai, haere mai. Councillor Maxwell.
And Madam Mayor, is this the appropriate place to also add or will reflect it somehow, but a vote of thanks to Ewan for his time service on our committee and that here. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell, and it is entirely appropriate. Now, would you like to just break for a quick coffee break and then come back in 5 minutes for the next item? Don't get too tetchy. Yeah. Don't get odiferous. It was better to put that on today. And they were saying the price was the issue. Did they push you for that on the hospitals report? Is it outrageous that you're buying this much? Oh, good. Because do you know what I was doing? I was doing the school run. And I said, I can't be there at 7. I'm crossing the town to pick up the milk. Good.